Hey, what's
going
on?
The perfect timing. That was beautiful.
Welcome to another edition of Titan Talk. I'm Isaiah, Kilgun with me as usual, and we brought in Clumsy with us because
what's going
for
on?
those of you who
we're
may have
buffing
hopped
tanks
into the flash test yesterday,
right,
you
guys?
may have noticed there's a lot of interesting item and god balance coming into open beta.
I'm just saying, the
9.
chefs don't stop cooking.
I know,
We're
right?
spoiling ourselves
I
with
know,
flash
right?
tests.
It's all good.
Yeah, Anka's the only
and
one.
Yes, the mic works. Hooray!
I know,
yes.
right?
So this is day 2 in the new room. As you can see, it's gotten a little bit better already.
Nope, we had
Number
one
the
Monday.
audio's better. Number 2, the lighting should be a little bit better today. We do have a little bit of like mood backlighting
right?
now.
Nice.
We still have some
Red versus
decorating
blue
to do. It's
Some
not.
decorating, yeah.
It's not perfect yet, but it's gonna keep getting better every day that we're in our new little closet. It's a bigger closet than the old closet, and and we'll keep improving. So yeah, hopefully everybody enjoys the show today, and I will.
I'm gonna enjoy it if we buff
No,
tanks.
You're good. It's important for us to kind of help Chris in this new room. Like you said, we're still kind of getting our bearings here, getting used to things, but it's just going to continue to improve as we keep doing shows over here in the new building.
RGB to change colors.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into Open Beta 9, shall we?
Yeah, sure.
Clumsy, I know this is kind of our third phase in the item specialization pass
That's
that we're
absolutely
doing
right.
in Smite 2, right? And like I mentioned earlier,
And
there are a
we're
lot of
buffing
changes
tanks.
that players maybe got a little bit of an eye and an early look in the flash test yesterday. But one of the biggest things that we're doing in this pass has to do with penetration. So before we hop in, we're going to bring up a doc and go through all the changes. But Clumsy, I would love for you to talk about, what we're kind of thinking about penetration in Smite 2 and kind of the overarching changes that we're doing.
Yeah,
here.
I want to double back on that point that you're saying because I think that is really important. And it's something that as we're doing these patches over the course of some time, it's starting to get a little bit lost in the messaging. And I think I just want to hone in on that again and again. Is that when we first started this endeavor in OB7, this was meant to be something that was resetting the item store foundation to make it healthier for the long term of the game. And it's something that we were doing in patches. We didn't have the capacity to do everything at the same time. But 2, it just allowing to do it in batches means that we just could react to player feedback, make sure that we're going the right direction. And we saw constant progress and positive feedback loops each step of the way. This is the end of that arc of item foundation, like creation or resetting, and there will still be more item changes. It's not like we're going to stop cooking or stop doing some spicy stuff. But the goal here is to make sure that we've addressed all the different characters, we've addressed their items, their power scales, their protection scales.
Maybe they just buff
was
warriors.
The last piece in that
What's up, Quick?
We did a lot of stuff with protections previously, but one of the last things we wanted to do was address penetration, because also not only does that help reset the foundation, but it also goes really hand in hand with the other part that we're talking about of item specialization.
Yes.
Right? Is one of the main mechanics of making sure that penetration was specialized was not just littering it everywhere in the item store. Now I understand there's been some feedback and some, discussion based on previous messaging that we've had in Smite 1 as well, where one of the opportunities of putting percent penetration and splashing that everywhere means you don't need to think about it as much. There are pros and there are cons, and to each approach. We think it's a lot healthier for the item store and for the game as a whole if you were a little bit more deliberate with your purchasing. There's that item specialization. Yes, that means there's going to be some fallout of like, hey, they're building 2 tanks or 3 tanks, and the no-brainer play is to go the high percent pen item, of which case if you've got your Ob Shard or your Titan's Bane, and you've got your Totem of Death and your Executioners, and that might just be the right play, and that's okay. Just in the same kind of vein, if someone's going high health, you would go the new Chin Size or Soul Reaver.
That's fair.
That just makes sense. But now there's an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? They're going for DPS. Maybe that's just the meta has changed. This is where they're going. Or I don't really want to focus on the tanks right now. I'm going to forego those options and build to counter or to specialize against what I want to do in this game. And same thing for the enemy. Maybe you can see as a tank, they're going high penetration, and you could go, okay, well, maybe let me shift into some more health opportunities, or maybe I'll let them do a lot of damage and do something like a Leviathans and reflect it back at them, or a Pharaohs or Circes and like do or Jade Scepter to push them away for a time being, right? We want to make sure that the game specialization is key here, and that will allow for a lot more skill expression as a whole. Now, are we going to get all the numbers and the balance right off the bat?
It depends.
Maybe not. People, that's something that we're always going to want to iterate on, and that's something that we're going to want to change over time.
Oh, it is Ken's Blade now.
The game feels too safe or too stagnant. That's something that's always going to be in flux, and that's a good thing. But this is the end of
Jade
the
Scepter propaganda.
we
need to nerf that
foundation. the second part of this patch and what we're going to see continuously onwards is making sure that the rest of the items that we didn't touch or any new items that we want to create into the game follow this new mold, this new foundation, and players can expect and understand when we have a new items like, oh, those base stats might be low. Let me have a look at that passive or active effect because that's probably where the power is.
Sounds good.
Damn, Clumsy
that was
just
a
went
good
off.
Preface, Clumsy. I'm gonna.
Yeah, that might have been a bit much. But
No,
I'm gonna bring up. Yeah, no,
thorough.
that's great. Yeah, I'll bring up the handy dandy PC, not laptop anymore, and we will bring
you
up.
still gotta say laptop.
Right?
I like it.
My quip.
Your quip, yes. We were joking that we should have a Titan Talk quip pack. You know, like one more question.
Oh,
And
that's
we're like,
I'm still going to be pushing for that smite
yeah,
cart.
yeah.
Sweet. Well, we've got
Okay,
item
tier
balance
2 is
up
getting
first,
changed.
and then the item changes are going to be listed into 2 sections here.
Tier
First,
2
penetration
pure.
item changes, then just general item changes for all the other non-pin items. So,
Yes.
as Clumsy, you said, we're going to be removing percent pin off of a lot of items, but increasing it, on a couple of items, leading into that more specialization.
Yep, absolutely. So you're going to see basically assume percent penetration is gone from basically every item, and it only will exist on those 4 or 5 last remaining items. Lucerne Hammer. So we also have to adjust the tier 2s here because
Yes.
that needs to be there for the tier 2s as well. Of which case, Evil Eye and Lucerne Hammer both had percent pen. We actually are taking an opportunity here not to just remove the percent pen, but actually do something that we've wanted to do for a while, which is convert these 2 items into tier 2 pure items, kind of like Void Shard is, that means they don't have a tier 1 item. They are just more expensive singular items that can build into tier 3s directly. And Lucerne Hammer and Evil Eye, losing that penetration, will be getting a lot more strength and int in return.
Yeah. And then
It is clumsy.
going on with the tier 2s, Killing Stone going to be decreasing the int and the recipe cost.
Yeah, we want to just make sure there's enough of a reason to have a difference between Killing Stone and Evil Eye, both of them being, their tier 2 int components. Lucerne Hammer didn't have that issue as much with Skagox.
Yeah. And then Void Shard, this is an interesting
Yeah,
one.
so another tier 2 pure item, one of the only ones that actually existed prior. This was the percent pen item.
Yes.
This was the only tier 2 item that you can get, the only component you can get that had percent pen. We already saw inklings of, interesting builds occurring in the past where like
Interesting.
maybe you'd go 2 or maybe even 3 void shards, sprinkling them in because you would like that percent pen. This was usually probably in the metas before the last changes of percent pen.
Yeah, the final build
but
is
now
gone.
we wanted to make sure that this isn't the right way, or this isn't some. Like, we don't want you to gamify this. You
Yeah.
can only get one. Just like it's a unique tier 2 item, just like all the tier 3s is unique.
Yeah.
It is the only one. The only tier 2 that is like that. We don't have any other tier 2s, I believe, that are unique.
Yep. And then
I
last
don't
up, the
think
tier
their
2s,
passives are that
Survivor
interesting
Sash.
in
This is
Smite 1.
another now T2 pure that doesn't build
And they
from
can't have
tier
that
1, but
because
also
there's-
has a passive.
Yeah.
They're the
Gains
only
25
penetration
strength or
options now.
35
So
int,
this one's a
depending
little
on which
bit
stat is
outside of
higher.
the penetration stuff, but it's one of the new tier 2s, so it makes sense to put it here.
Right.
Which is we're going to see this effect in a couple of more other items, where it's taking that kind of shifter shield gimmick of.
I think that's execution,
You either
right?
get one stat or the other, depending on which of one of you is higher. For all of the ones that have that stat line, and maybe we'll change it in the future, it will default to strength. So if you buy Survivor Stash that has, and you have no other items, because
Yeah, I like the system too.
You will just get the 25 strength, and again, that'll be that same caveat.
Also,
But you'll
Thieves
see that in a
Nemean
couple
could be
more.
okay,
Plus, I
Jiggy,
think
but
there
they're
was
just going to not hit
This
you.
is pointed out.
Unless it's like a
by
Zeus who
Zooty
just
too, but
drops ult
Survivor
on
Stash
his
previously and
feet, and you can just stand in
Fencer's
it.
Buckler, I think, were the ones. Those just were tier 2 items without tier 3 items.
Yes.
Based on
And you're kinda
previous,
just abusing
item store
Nemean 'cause
changes.
it doesn't have a good
The
visual.
Buckler has now been removed.
As soon
and
as
Survivor
Nemean
Stash
gets
has
a
now been
visual and people are like, oh, I
All right, well,
shouldn't
let's start
auto
talking
this
about
guy.
Tier 3s, and let's just talk about the premier percent penetration items going into
Yes.
OB9. Titan's Bane and Obsidian Shard, similar in function, but we're going to be
Is your ult points from
increasing the
Bacchus? It
passive
was.
percent
I haven't really
penetration
used it in a
from
while,
25%
but it was.
to 35%, and they're both going to be seeing recipe cost adjustments.
Yep, that's right. So we want to make sure that they in our last pass of Titan's Bane and Obsidian Shard, we made them a little bit more luxury price and we gave them some more pen. That was
Manchu
actually
bow.
like the first step that we were going to eventually get here too. We wanted to do that early to make sure that the player base was generally happy with what was going on prior. This is where we wanted to end up being, which is these are the luxury percent pen, high percent pen, not the highest amount of damage items, but they're going to feel pretty good to get regardless because they have that luxury price tag according to them. But if you're going to go these, you're probably not going to get them that early. So tanks also have the opportunity to build into protections a little bit earlier if they want to make sure that to force you kind of to go into this luxury item path.
And keep in mind, right? The
problem is you have to-
are actually shattering, correct?
Yes, that's
So
right.
you cannot buy both of them. If you buy both of them, you're still only going to get 35% pen.
That's a
so
good point.
You can only have one 35% pen item in your build. There's just a magical version, and there's a physical, a int version and a strength version. Sorry. because of shattering, like only one of these will work if you buy.
You have to get up to like 150, 200 protections from items.
Totem of Death.
For protections like actually be worth it.
Again, another % penetration item, but we're going to be increasing the intelligence and the cooldown rate.
New room, Bearded.
The passive
New
max
room.
stacks have also been increased, and the recipe has been increased for the cost.
Yep. So we wanted to make sure that Totem of Death, kind of the equivalent to Executioner, that's going to be seeing some changes as well. Felt pretty good for the opposite
Just
case.
buffing Totem of
You're
Death
not just
is
trying to get those one-off
insane.
damage instances of high penetration, but you're going to try and stack that over time.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder to use that as intelligence users, ability users, more so actually on the ability side, because with basic attacks, you're just the frequency of those are a lot more often. With wall abilities, the frequency is a lot less. Plus, you have the cooldown baked into it as well. So even if you have full cooldown reduction, it's not going to be the same as having high attack speed.
Yep. All right. Next up, still moving on to the penetration items, but this is an interesting change. So first up, Demonic Grip.
How much
Removed
pen
from
do
the
you
game.
get for 200
Yeah.
prop
But
build?
see
35.
the execution.
I wanted to make sure to keep that texted,
Yeah.
even though it's like the next line.
All right, so
It's like,
let's
you know
talk
what?
about just Demonic Grip and the Executioner kind of in conjunction, since they are
They also
related.
buffed
But
Executioner.
Demonic Grip was previously the intelligence-focused, basic attack, shred protections item.
Yes,
This has been kind of looped into the
They buffed
execution.
Exy from
So
15%
talk
attack
to me
speed to
about what's happening
25%
to the
attack speed.
Executioner.
Yeah,
And
so
then they
Execution
also gave it
Demonic
another
Grip
stack.
Served a very, very similar purpose, and we were starting to see a lot of people get confused on which one was more important, especially when you're building a soul and you can go intelligence or you could go strength based, and you didn't even know which one Demonic Grip or the Executioner was going. It didn't really make sense to have two items serve a very similar purpose. And then once we started getting, honestly, it actually took us working on Shifter Shield and past that tech to make sure that we can actually build that up into the future, which is that survival.
Yeah, Demo
stat
Grip
tech
was probably
of
the
now
worst
having,
item in the game.
one stat be higher than the other. So Executioner is there for both of you now. So if you're going to get strength or an intelligence build, but you want to have that protection shred, then this is the item for you.
Yeah.
And Executioner and Totem of Death both are piercing.
Yes.
So
exactly.
if you have both of them, you aren't going to get double protection shred stacks here.
Yeah. Yep.
And then from a math perspective, I might be asking you too much of a question here.
No, you're good.
But so Executioner, Demonic Grip, remove it from the god that they're putting the stacks on. Is that like additive with Obsidian Shard? So if I'm removing, let's just say 30% with Executioner, then is it plus 35%, or is it 35% of the remaining?
It's going to be of what's remaining there.
Of the remaining. Okay.
And this was mentioned on one of the Reddit threads as well, which I thought was really important to see, is that if you're going to be building, Executioner and Titan's Bane or Obsidian Shard, and Executioner actually. in this
Also,
case,
that Sir
you're
build
gonna
from
be getting
Monday's
less
video,
value of the
you get
second
even
one
more
because there's
shred
less
from
protections
Totem.
left on the enemy. That being said, it's not going to be that bad, but it's going to be something that you want to just keep in mind. If you are seeing an enemy that's getting just turbo building on protections and maybe not as so much health, you might want to double up on the percent pen here versus maybe going one of them and then going a Chin Size or Soul Reaver
They
instead.
buff the int on Exy. It doesn't.
All right. Well, let's talk about the rest of
For the most
penetration
part,
items in chat.
X
you
is
will
just
notice a
gonna be
trend
strength.
as we start talking
Yeah,
about
exactly.
Oathsworn Spear and the rest of the items in
Like we
this
watch your
section. But
videos and-
the first bullet point is probably going to be the same for all of them. Remove the percent penetration from this item, but in turn, a lot of these items are going to be seeing stat increases across all the other things that they provide. So
And this does still have the flat prot shred on ability usage.
Yes.
Okay.
The flat prod. Yeah. Oathsworn Spear is one of the only ones left that has a different version of penetration.
I think this item has
This
been
and Stone
buffed.
of Binding, I think, are the only
This
two
item has
that
been
have.
buffed.
Yeah, and then like the Void Shard and Void Stones have a little bit on their
Sure.
aura as well, which we're going to get to in a bit. Oh, one last note, because I know that there's some astute players
Yeah, I
on
agree, Crow.
that were checking out the PTS. Executioner did have an unintentional change there where it gained attack speed based on just in general. It went from 15% to 25%. That was just an error.
Oh.
I think the intelligence wasn't changed. The intentional effect is the attack speed is remaining the same at that 15%, and the intelligence was actually increased
Yes!
to compensate, because the
That
main
was
difference
me.
between,
I was that
between
guy.
Demonic Grip and the Executioner actually was that Demonic Grip had a higher attack speed.
Yes.
Executioner had the lower one, so in return you're getting more intelligence by getting the Executioner instead.
cool.
Yes.
So Oathsworn Spear, remove
go.
the percent pen, but increasing the strength and decreasing the recipe cost.
Yeah, so
He did call me
we're seeing a couple
astute.
places where the recipe cost is going to be changing because Lucerne Hammer and Evil Eye now have that change with them as well. So
The tier
even
twos,
here,
yeah.
you can see the decreased recipe cost is actually leading to an increased total cost. But that's usually
No,
gonna be
X is only
because of the,
15%.
because of the tier 2s.
I'm fine
And
with
also,
Exy
we
with
took
that
these
then.
opportunities when we removed the percent pen to just gauge where we wanted some of these tier 2s to remain. So in this case, we could have just removed the
Actually
percent
did
pen
just
and
get
kept
a buff,
the strength low
though.
and decrease the cost, but that wasn't really
It's
the
just
goal.
an
We wanted
extra
to make sure
stack
with
still.
a lot of these we want to just as we stripped away a lot of strength and intelligence previously, this was actually a pass that we always wanted to do to make sure that there was a lot more mid to high end tier high power items.
Yeah. All right, next up we've got the Crusher. Remove the % pin, but increase the strength, increase the cooldown rate, and there is a recipe change with those two twos.
So a lot of opportunities
Crusher was
where, again, we took 8% off, but gave some power in return. In this case, we gave back a little bit of cooldown rate to just make sure that you feel a little bit.
I think that's an outright buff for Crusher too.
Brawler's Ruin and Divine Ruin, on the other hand, that you're going to see, they just went a lot more premier on the power. That being said, there's an opportunity to talk about the fact that we are still looking at the anti-heal items to potentially gain some spice back, similarly to the way that they worked in Smite 1.
I think Brawlers is slightly worse.
Especially now with a stat being removed.
I think Brawlers, I'd rather have the pen than just that strength, and then have the 50 gold cheaper.
I don't want to call it a lackluster passive because these passives are pretty darn good.
They're very strong.
With the last anti-heal changes.
But you don't going back to what we were talking about previously about like auras. Yeah. Not on this show, but on other shows. Like, you don't necessarily feel how impactful it is because there's not this extra visual tell that something is happening. Right. In the way that, like, when I don't even remember what triggered it, but there was the anti-heal tank item in Smite 1 that I think when somebody CC'd you,
Contagion.
then they would they got the circles of like anti-heal that popped out.
Yeah, Contagion.
Contagion, right? Like, that was very obvious that, like, it's doing something, right?
That's true.
Maybe a little too obvious, but it's very obvious that it's doing something. And people generally react to and buy items more when they can tell that they're doing something.
Yeah. Yes.
Even if it subtly has a really strong effect that they just weren't noticing previously.
Right. It's like it's still the case that a lot of people think that not necessarily healing is though, but if you go build into lifesteal, they don't notice the effects of it, but over time it accumulates, especially when you're talking about that we don't have like the brawling rules of previous. You're gaining a lot more sustain over time.
Yeah. All right, so we talked about Brawler's Ruin and
don't you
Divine
heal off
Ruin.
of minions
Heartseeker
less though?
in between those two.
Yeah.
We're
So
gonna be
the
increasing
out of
the
combat
strength
healing
and
is
the
pretty
mana
irrelevant when you're
of
just
the
healing off of
percent
minions
initiative.
less.
Yep. Again, another opportunity where we didn't want to just inflate the strength, but we wanted to give it a little bit of a secondary status.
I didn't talk. Yippee.
Next up, Spear of
This
Desolation.
is a
I've been hearing some inklings that this
crazy
item
buff.
is real good in the flash tests. So we're removing the percent pen. Int has been increased from 85 to 100.
Bro, this item
and
lost
we have
5
increased
pen?
the passive cooldown reduction from 1 second to
And they
3
like
seconds
tripled
for
the strength of the
non-ultimate
passive and
abilities,
gave it more
5
int.
seconds to 10 seconds for ultimate abilities.
So another one of those opportunities where we said, hey, the passive of this item is one of the more unique parts about it. The percent penetration is a heavy shift away from the strength of this item. What can we do to, make it more interesting instead? We could have just given it even more intelligence, but we wanted to use this opportunity to play around with the passives more. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the nerf that happens to it if necessary, but I would assume that if we do want to look at a Spear of Desolation nerf, one of the opportunities we would question next would be, instead of nerfing the passive immediately, what's the right intelligence for this cost? And this is kind of just the theory behind it. Not trying to say it's immediately an overpowered item.
Yeah.
But if we were to address it, we want to make sure that we keep the strengths of passives and actives intact. And potentially looking around at other places for nerfs.
Yeah, chat's really excited about this one. I think this is a fun one. You were doing work with it in playtest today.
Yeah, I will
not elaborate more on that, but you were doing work with it. So
it's cool to just get those, cooldown reductions and start spamming those abilities.
Because I went Chronos Pendant and then I went Spear of Desolation, and like after I got a kill, I like forgot already that my ability was up. I actually thought, because I was testing.
No,
spoilers. Testing a character, and I was just like, oh yeah, wait, did I bug out? Did I just have no cooldown? I was like, oh no, I just got it all back really quickly. Wait, I can't.
No spoils. Come on, Clumsy.
Who is he playing?
I was testing my smite card.
I know, right?
I was revving the gas.
Necronomicon up next, going to be decreasing the cost, removing the percent pen, adding 300 mana and 5 mana regen, and increasing the intelligence from
that's a nerf.
Getting a double recipe change, I think. Killing Son of Which are replaced with Mana Summon Evil Eye. So that gives it a little bit of the mana and the mana regen, but also
that's a big nerf to Necro. Necro was 10% pen.
You're getting another more synergy with like Book of Thoth and items like that. So that just gave us an opportunity there.
Damn, that is a massive Necro
nerf. It's pretty good. It has a pretty heavy trade-off. To just be careful about it, because I've seen people keep it on 0 stacks for an entire game as well.
Yep.
Come on. Maybe
All
something.
right, let's talk about Doom Orb next. Rada Tahuti right underneath there, and these are the last two underneath the penetration item umbrella.
Jeez.
We're all going to talk about the void.
How many
items
stacks
a
does
little
Doom
bit
Orb
later,
get?
but they're under
3?
general item
That's right.
changes.
Doom Orb was another opportunity where we didn't want to just change the percent pen.
It was
and give
8
other stats to it,
pervert?
but it's another one where we wanted to specialize it away from Gemma Focus.
Okay.
Both of those were, int items with some level of maneuverability, gaining different amounts of movement speed based on it, and they just didn't have a distinct purpose. So we doubled down on Gemma Focus and Tekokage, and we wanted to remove that from Doom Orb to make sure that, hey, this is the premier int item that can gain even more int over time. It's going to get a pretty large amount.
The stacks just don't last long enough on Doom Orb.
And then Rod of Tahuti, last but not least, removing the percent pen, increasing the int, the mana, the passive intelligence conversion, and there's a recipe change as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think the big line there is the 20% to 25% int conversion feels pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Who is Tahuti? Is Tahuti an Egyptian god? Is that? I've never thought about this before.
Yeah, it's no Bancroft's Talon, that's for sure.
It's no Bancroft's
Right,
Talon.
yeah.
Bancroft's Talon is a global agenda reference.
Yes, it is.
But
yes, that's right. Chaos said that correctly. Tahuti is though. It's for those.
okay.
Yes.
There you go. I was like, who is? So he's got a book and a rod.
Yep.
Exactly.
Man.
All right.
This is, I think,
Orb gets
before
5
Heat came
stacks.
out, those items existed.
Yeah, but we've been getting a lot of feedback for a long time that mages have felt underpowered.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that.
Yeah, I
there's
think
a lot of
whoever
changes
thinks
here that
mages are
should
underpowered
help
are fucking
mages
lost.
Feel more, in the conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit overpowered in some cases. But I think that it's a good shift for the game and for the meta.
Gemma
and we can
Focus
see
was
how
it.
it feels, and then as we said, this is phase 3
Yes,
of the item changes.
Technically
But
phase 3 out of 3, but that doesn't mention the balance and the iteration that we want to do, and just more specialization we want to do across the board, and just even revisiting these ones as well.
yeah, so I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to experiment.
Rod
with
is
in
already
this
way
game,
too
especially
massive a
if you're
spike. Yeah, now it's
mage
like
player.
double.
I know we haven't even gotten into the general item changes.
Yeah.
And
Because you're
there's
getting
some
more,
spicy
you're
stuff
getting
in there
more
as
into the
well.
build.
I was rechecking all of
And
these
then
ones,
that
but I
int
forgot
is
about all the general
more
items.
valuable.
So,
Fun stuff.
Let's talk about
Talk
Gauntlet
about
of Thieves first, just because getting
Crazy.
a pretty significant shift. This was kind of your premier. I'm
Between
gonna
just
stack
before
this
Rod
get
and
a lot
after
of
Rod, and your damage is
protections.
insane.
This item is being shifted to be more of a max health focused item. So the new passive is being shifted.
Yeah, that item
to,
is going to be
grant max
that item is
health
going to be in
and,
every mage
on
build.
stacks and bonus max health.
They have to
whenever
find
you
a way
get
to
it
make,
fully
like,
evolved.
a harass item.
What's
Every
40 times
stack gets 15, and then
a lot
at
of
max
numbers.
stacks you get 200.
'Cause
I believe
everyone just
the
builds
net
high
is
intelligence
just
in mid.
1,000 max health.
That sounds right.
From
What's up,
no
Magic?
Gauntlet of Thieves to fully stacked and evolved Gauntlet of Thieves.
40
So,
times 15 is 600, so it's 800, and then there's probably some base max health
Yes,
on it
there
too.
is.
So yeah, so that's a lot of health.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of health.
Like a
so
poke
one of the
item?
main things we
Poke
wanted to
item?
do
No.
here is we were always going to be in this
Like a constant
weird
DPS
arms
item.
race between which one's
Like
better,
an
Gauntlet of
item
Thieves
that
and
you'd
Prophetic.
want to build with
Or
Chronos Pendant and
just
Deso,
hit.
where
Right, and yes, they have a game.
If you hit an
in
enemy,
the way that you stack them,
back to
but
back to back to
that
back to
didn't
back, like that
mean they
damage
were
ramps
helping
up.
to
So like,
coexist in the same gameplay space. So once again,
it's not
in terms of
necessarily you want to build high
specialization,
int. You
what
want to
we're
just
seeing
build
now,
high.
We wanted to separate those two.
Quick
If you
focuses
want
of
a lot
damage
of
or something like
protections,
that.
well, you're gonna have to play into that prophetic cloak gameplay, or just buy protection-based items. You don't have to opt into that gameplay if you don't want to. Just buy individual items that can get you there. Or Gauntlet of Thieves.
Army
well,
for
this
Rotting
is
Shard
now
for 6K
the
gold?
classic,
Yeah,
I want
I
to
can
run
definitely
health,
see
and
that.
I want to play. with
I
my
think their
team in
idea
order to
behind
get
mage
that.
specialization,
That being said, as I'm sure everyone is well aware,
specialization builds
Gauntlet
are
of
just
Thieves stocks
incorrect.
went up,
I
which
think
means health
hunter
goes
builds
up,
have
which means
pretty
chin size
high
and sword are
specialization.
now even better
I
against
see
it.
chat
But
saying
hunters, I mean,
Kins
mages
go
have never
bird
really had
now.
that.
But that's what I love about this new system, right? Is that if
So
you see
tablet?
somebody
No,
building
tablet's
max
just a
health,
poke
then
item.
Kins
That's
does
every
go bird.
ability.
Yeah.
But if the
I want
person
an item
decides
that
instead to go prophetic and
you
go
want
heavy into
cooldown
protections,
more
then
than you
Kins
want
isn't going to do that
high
much,
pen,
right?
or sorry, high
there's-
intelligence.
Like you can't just blindly build Kins every game and be like, cool,
Like,
I'm going to go
kind
burr,
of like
right?
Tearfang. Yeah, like
you have to
Tearfang.
think a little bit about like how do I want to go burr, right?
Especially
Like,
because even if they are doing that and are feeling strong against that player, but that means that chin size is being built and that person's just not doing nearly as much damage against that squishy character as well. So now it's again, this is a team-based game. That's one of the things that makes it so great and so hard at the same time. It's like if you see
and that just braggies. No, tearfing ramps up the more you hit somebody.
Well, then you as an assassin have more of an opportunity to actually go gank them or go kill them because now you're going to be more effective.
But instead of like
it's
tearfing,
those synergies and those team-based things that
it's like if you hit an enemy within 1 second,
in mind because I know when it
the
comes
damage
to
stays the same. Within 2 seconds, it drops by half. 3 seconds, it drops by 30%.
But when you put
4 seconds, it drops by 25. Like so, you're incentivized to like constantly just putting out damage, and that's where like your damage comes from
immediately. Yeah. As soon as you put one other teammate
or like a character like that.
You just can't.
It's just every character in mid wants to build high int.
I'm not saying we got the numbers perfectly anywhere or everywhere. We're going to keep iterating.
Yes.
Want to build pen.
Yeah. All right. Next up, let's talk about Gemma Focus and Techno.
Like I feel like a god like Nuwa should not be incentivized to build
kind of related and similar. So Gemma Focus
percent pen. Like she should want to damage backliners.
The passive has been shifted. When you use an ability, gain a
she kind of has been like reworked a lot where her ult doesn't even do much damage anymore.
6 seconds, stacking up to 3 times.
She kind of just is a frontline killer with her 2-3, but then they kind of
there were just
have nerfed her
opportunities
damage.
where they had a very similar gameplay purpose that we wanted to just stay away from.
Sorry, Pom Pom's in chat. He says, "Nah, Matt's perfect. We nailed it." Sorry,
without a doubt.
First try.
Yeah. Just wrap it up. Yeah. Balance is solved. Yeah, so Gemma Focus is actually.
I kind of like
so one of the
these
ways
two shifts. I like
Gemma
these
Focus
two.
has a reduced cost, right? And then this is going to be the int-based one. So if you're going Tekokage, you're obviously going to have a strength-based build, and you want to have that movement speed.
I like these reworks.
Increased. I feel like we also removed something else from the passives.
Bring back Maman?
Sure
nope.
As well.
Unless you mean like she's just a unique mage,
then
then yes.
It's just going to be gaining the movement speed from the passive now. And
but
so then the other thing is we weren't super stoked about those like shared hybrid builds where you end up just going both.
Ooh, it is only 6 seconds.
Even more movement speed than intended.
But I think that's fine.
I
think that's fine.
Means that you
like,
can't double up on
Chronos Pendant, Gemma Focus, and then like...
So chat does have an interesting question here. Why did we not merge these in the way that we merged Executioner?
Great question. So that's one of those opportunities that we actually discussed that in the design team, and we said, hey, there is every opportunity to
maybe because these items just have so much more of an identity towards their side.
But there's also opportunities to do kind of the opposite, which is, again, Gemma Focus is the reduced cost one. It's $23.50. It's a cheaper item where you're getting less out of it. It is a less, effective or efficient
but like Chronos Pendant into Gemma Focus into like another item that is like low cooldown you want to spam, kind of like Soul Gem,
like power curve range. You might want to go Gemma Focus early because it's a lot cheaper, but then maybe it's something that you sell later on because you don't
Guanu just gets value from building attack speed on his 3 and assault.
So basically they live in a different design space while Demonic Grip and the Executioner lived in the same design space.
Yep. And for people just joining, like the reason why
she still builds just high end.
The name Momentum to this was to make it so that they grant you the same thing, so that you can't buy both and get
like
double
piercing
stacks.
and shattering.
Yeah, that's why I've said
and
Cleo's a character I
like,
want because Cleo can be so cool in Smite 2.
Piercing and shattering, it allows us to
Thieves
do
is no protections, it's only a health.
Hey, this item no longer stacks with A, B, C, D, and E. It's just cleaner.
All right, next up, Mystical Mail. This is an interesting.
I think this is a good change. I like this.
So we did build some new tech. They're going to see a little bit with Mystical
Mail. I like
this
change.
Void and the Void Shield, Void Stone items, is that, and this came from the ambassadors, which I think we all thought was a good idea, which is some of these items are kind of just like, especially the aura-based items, they're kind of just too free for what they do. Let them be strong, but let them be strong with a purpose to them. Yes. So all 3 of these you're going to see
Thieves is worse.
Thing,
I think Thieves is fine. I think Thieves is a good option.
Better, and for a Mystical Mail sense, gets better to almost kind of like what it used.
The problem doesn't come down to Thieves being a worse item. Thieves is shifted. It's the same item, like the same strength, but it's shifted. The problem comes down to there's no protection item to build now. So Thieves filled a niche. It now fills a different niche, and there's no niche, or there's no item to fill the niche of previous Thieves. So it's like Thieves as an item shifted. It's not worse, but support builds and solo builds are getting worse because you don't have just like that high value protection item. Prophetic is so bad.
Increasing the health and the magical protection.
Prophetic is so
bad. The active effect has been shifted. So now you're going to fire out 3 pulses, healing you for 100 HP plus 10% of your missing HP, and dealing true damage equal to your level plus 3% of your max health from items to enemies within 3.2 meters around.
Also, I think this item is terrible.
Yes, and I didn't word this correctly because I think... So I just have to remember, or I'm going to say something that's just incorrect, which can happen. I think the cooldown reduced as well. Because one of the things that happened there is we decreased some stats to make it a little bit less efficient. we changed around the active, but we can get to that in a second. But the cooldown also decreased by quite a bit to make up for the stat shift. Again, kind of leaning a little bit more into the active effect. And then about the active effect itself, it's just kind of a little bit more interesting, the fact that it happens over time. It's something that you could react to a bit more versus something that
Thieves
happens
is
more
basically.
immediately.
Yeah, that's
we
how
saw
Thieves
that
is
effect be pretty successful by splitting out the
But I
damage.
keep even maxed out.
This
You,
is
it's
something where,
12%
surprising
mitigation,
how
I
much this
think.
can do and how much it can heal in one burst. That's kind of unreactable.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Same
people
with
in chat
Lightning
saying
as
this with Thieves. They're already starting to cook a little
right?
bit. Yeah.
That's
Well,
right.
and there's other items that go off of it too, right?
Yeah.
Like Circe's, right? So like
Circe's
you can
Techstone,
you can Circe's in to do damage based on your max health, and then you can do this to do more damage based on your max health, and like lots of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's have
Next
some
up, we
items
got
that are
rage.
based off
A
of
little
our
bit a
protections
shift
that are
here.
good.
It's kind of a net nerf. We're going to be decreasing the critical strike chance
Yeah,
per
rage
stack
is
from
nerfed.
5% to 4%, but we're going to be increasing the max stacks from 4 to 5.
Breastplate might get
it's
good
gonna
at
take
value
you one
early
extra
now.
kill to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that
I
fully
think
stacked.
I thought
It's
last
super
patch.
kind of lights tap
like
on the wrist.
OB8.
We are very
I thought
well
breastplate
aware
was a
that
good
Rage
first
is
item.
pretty good. Its strength is on the
Down
lower
with
side
tanks.
for an item. But that being said, if you can get to around 50% crit chance, you're still pretty happy. We just want that investment to take a little bit more time, to be a little bit more.
So I'm saying,
you know,
team for
risky.
building 4 mages,
That
1
being said, if we
physical.
need to look at this again,
4
to
magical,
just
1
decrease
physical.
its efficiency more, we can. But this was a step to make sure that it felt like an investment rather than something that just happened too quickly.
The enemy team for building 4 magical, 1 physical, and 4 of the 5 have 35%
penalty
penalty to support. Would you just get melted? Yeah.
Increasing the max health again, though.
Yeah, so this is a little bit more.
There's
of,
nothing to stop it.
stat
That's why I
shifts.
think
One,
nobody's gonna wanna play tanks.
Just make sure it didn't feel like it had a little bit of everything, because I believe, if I remember correctly, it has double
Any
procs.
junglers
it
that
had
build
health,
crit
and it
right
had
now?
mana.
Yeah.
That's just a little bit too much of everything. And
I don't
then
think
also,
so.
this was the premier place where Survivor Sash,
No,
with
Kali
the
doesn't
new
build
iteration,
crit.
made sense to bring it back in.
Yep. All right, next up, Sunbeam Bow. Let's talk about it.
Yeah,
This item has
Sunbeam
seen,
Bow.
Yeah, shifter
multiple
sucks
iterations, multiple spots in the meta, but it's going to be seeing a significant change here. We're removing the strength, intelligence, and mana regen from the item, decreasing the attack speed, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
The passive damage scaling has been increased from 20% of basic attack damage to 30%, and then the passive now has an additional effect. You gain 40 strength or 50 intelligence, depending on which stat is higher.
Yeah, so another opportunity for us to bring in kind of that, I'll call it hybrid or shifting.
I want to
power.
talk over this item, so I'm going to mute them. Yeah, no, this is... It's feeling like more of a niche specifically to when you pop your Sunbeam Bow, you will shred. The issue is you might run out of mana. So now they're actually making you think, do you want to build like a Transcendence or something to like have that mana to have that mana sustain? Because when you use it, you will go through your mana quickly and you won't have that the mana coming back into your through the MP5 from the mana regen, or the MP1 whatever from the mana regen. But I think Sunbeam Bow with Desolation gives you like 2% of your mana back per auto. So that kind of mitigates a lot of it. So I think this item will be crazy. And you just build Desolation.
Going down, it's obviously not a ton, but it's going down to 10%, and that's because we didn't want it to be its own enabler. We want you to go this item and go more attack speed with it. Similarly, actually, I think we had a note here to discuss that we had conversations from the community, or I think even from the ambassadors, talking about how they might want it to be, instead of mana drain, be mana per attack, so that way you can kind of build more mana into it.
Yeah,
but that also makes it even worse with attack speed. You're actually, it's like an anti-synergy with itself. So there's a pro and there's a con there. I think we wanted the opportunity to go, hey, no, we want you to build a lot of attack speed. We want you to be able to do more if you synergize with this item versus actually trying to counter it in a different way and being penalized in a different way.
I think they're running into an issue also with there's
We already
no...
talked about Tekko Kage, sorry. I copied.
You need
pasted
just
it to
like
move the
stat
next Gemma
items.
Focus and
If you're
forgot
gonna
to
do
delete the initial
items
line, but,
needing
Void Shield,
you
and
know,
Void
certain
Stone.
stats,
Let's
you
talk
have to
about
have
both of
items
these
that are just
items
statted well
in
that aren't a
conjunction.
passive.
So, passive effect shift, we kind of mentioned it.
That's the issue they're running into. There's no stat stick items
now
anymore.
kind of scale with distance and range.
Exactly. Kind of similar effect that we were talking about, like you said. We wanted to make sure that we were still happy with the aura-based. These allow either the bruisers or even the tanks to kind of splash into these.
A mage ADC
and
solo
make the
meta?
enemy feel like they're being disrupted. Make your allies
probably-
really feel like they're gaining a little more efficiency out of this.
Probably like
Similar
a
to Stone
major
of Binding.
assassin solo meta
We didn't
more
like
than
just
ADC.
how easy it was to splash and to affect everyone in a team fight. So now it's like, hey, I'm the tank or I'm the bruiser, whatever it may be. I want to hit you.
Yes.
Everyone else, this is the time for you guys to know also this is the person who you should be hitting.
Yeah, this is where we want to get active. for sure.
Exactly.
We've got a couple starter item changes.
Tritons is like hardly a stat stick. It's like an aura for your team.
Bluestone Brooch and Bumba Spear.
There's very
Bluestone
few actual
first,
stat sticks.
Going to be decreasing the damage from 120 to 100 over 2 seconds. And then we also fixed an issue where the repeat hit damage from this item was doing 2/3 damage instead of half.
Jeez. Holy.
Did I write this right?
Yeah, I'm now thinking. Chat can correct me because I may have forgotten to update the description, but was the previous range on Void Shield and Void Stone also 8.8? Because then theoretically that should be the new 50%. Because that's the middle ground one when it increases to the 8.8 at the max range. I'll just double check that.
And 8.8 meters is just the actual distant conversion of Smite 1 units.
Yes.
Which is it's what we use everywhere. We measured it out, and that's what it is. That's why it is. Chat's like, why 8.8 meters? It's like the same as whatever it's 20 units or whatever the range was in Smite 1.
Yeah, I know the math, but I can't do it in my head.
Yeah. Bluestone.
So I'm gonna revisit. So note to self: revisit those radiuses just to make sure I messed it up or didn't mess it up. Bluestone Brooch. Okay, yeah. So the last two items we just wanted to do. So honestly, these are just like housekeeping lights balance of Bluestone Brooch and Bumba Spear. Dummy good stats show they are extremely strong items. We didn't want to put them into hotfixes because they didn't feel like it was that
Really?
necessary.
Bluestone's
but
good?
in a main patch, these were the two items that kind of stood out. Both of these were exceptionally overperforming out of the other starter item upgrades, and we just wanted to make sure they hit them with a light nerfs. In fact, Bluestone Brooch had actually a bug to it, which was I think probably based on previous balance, the subsequent damage
Nerfing selflessness. Supports don't win games. So in the data, selflessness is probably sitting at a 50% win.
So we hit the
50% win rate.
Pompon says that 8.8 meters is the ranged basic attack range. So
yes.
If you're curious how long that feels, that is that distance. So.
They nerfed Bluestone?
Right, well,
yeah, Uber's
that is
fucked.
it for items. That was a lot. Again, this is kind of phase 3 of the item specialization pass. Lots of interesting changes that players are going to be able to play around with. I'm super excited to see the kind of build variety that shapes up once OB9 goes live. I've already been seeing some cool stuff in the flash test.
Yeah.
But, let's talk about God Balance, shall we?
Sure. Yeah, we're not done.
I know, right?
But wait.
Athena up first. Gonna be seeing a buff. Confound,
She needs
gonna
it.
be
She sucks.
Decreasing the cooldown, and then Defender of Olympus decreasing the cooldown on Athena as well.
Yeah. So for the item balance, we had a lot of like specific goals in terms of special.
And this is a buff to both her and her
God
aspect.
balance, we just wanted to look at opportunities to mostly
This is
buff
good.
characters that were underperforming. So almost all of these were generally not doing so hot for the majority.
Bro,
of the player
what is
base.
that Bellona
Athena
buff?
was absolutely right there.
Oh
One
my
opportunity we had
goodness.
was the cooldown reduction because she just has some long cooldowns, not just on the ulti, but 18 seconds. Sure, the taunt is good,
Yeah.
but. Wow, that's long, and even 16 seconds is pretty long. But I know.
Granted,
as soon as
maybe
we
you're
go
just
even
getting
further,
like
people
half
are
the
like, "You were crazy,
protections,
the
so
taunt
it's
effect is too good." And
it
just
really
obviously
is
does
just that bad
And we also
beforehand.
want to make sure if your effects are good, that might be okay. But let's cooldown reduction to kind of help out, to splash that in there, right? To help out.
All right,
leave that.
Bellona up next, going to be seeing a buff to Scourge and Eagle's Rally. Scourge clarified that the heal scaling from this ability is only physical protections.
Yes.
We increased the heal scaling from 5% to 10% of physical.
Yeah, I believe in game this says just protections, but it has only ever been based off of physical protections. So we clarified that, and then we gave that a bit of a buff.
Watching Titan talk.
It was honestly the best healing.
You're a bastard.
And then Eagle's Rally, just seeing a damage increase.
Yeah, I mean,
So fucking
it does a lot of
tasty,
good
you know
stuff,
what I'm
and it's a
saying?
movement ability,
People
but
leave
150
finger.
base damage, just a little bit sad.
You can bump up just a little bit.
Yeah, it's like adding a plus 70 is like sounds like a huge number, but from 150 it had some room to grow.
I mean,
and you can
that's
see
like
the end
a,
game amount
what,
is basically
50%
exactly
buff?
the same because we didn't see that being the issue.
Cool. Nemesis up next, going to be seeing a buff to Swift Vengeance, increasing the damage of each dash, and then Slice and Dice, increasing the center damage.
Yep. So again,
I don't
damage
have
on
an
each
opinion
dash,
about
it's only
them.
a
I
10
think
damage
she's
increase,
I think this is
but
a nice
it's
buff for
2
her, though.
dashes, and if you commit to both, you're getting a 20 damage per rank there. Centered Slice and Dice, just a little bit more scaling there. Nemesis has definitely been slightly underperforming, especially across some of the other assassins that have been added to the game, and just with the item builds that are currently there.
Yeah.
Yeah, chat has been asking for a Nemesis buff today a lot. So
Oh, have they?
they
Is
should be
that what?
happy.
Nice.
We did that. So,
We made them happy.
It's like we planned it.
yep.
Up next, Raw, going to be seeing a buff. Searing Pain, increasing
Why
the
are
true
we
damage
buffing
dealt from
Raw,
5% to
man?
8% of the target's max HP.
Yeah.
Those Raw ults going to be hit
Yeah,
now.
those are like
Why are
the
we buffing
easiest thing to
Raw?
hit, and Raw stocks have absolutely actually been pretty low, even though, he's felt pretty good, especially with the aspect and everything, and the +1 to his 2. But yeah, let this hurt, but let this hurt a little bit more against healthier targets. I think there's something more interesting about that than just being a deletion for squishies.
For sure. Rom up next, going to be seeing
this character needs buffs.
Aspect of precision.
You could triple buff this character. He is so shit.
Going to be decreasing the slow max stacks from 3 to 2, and
I think he still sucks.
Duration, and then base Rom.
I think he still sucks, honestly.
Increasing the bonus damage strength scaling from 10% to 15%.
Yeah, so this is one of the aspect opportunities where, when we analyzed it, his aspect has been doing pretty well, but base Rama has not been doing so good. That's just like, and this we didn't have the split Astral Strike like effects, and we just kind of built that here. So we took this opportunity to kind of readdress that, make sure they weren't coupled so hard together, so that we can do stuff.
Yeah, no, this character is crazy bad.
Aspect of Precision's Astral Strike.
And they nerfed his aspect, and then they buffed his base kit.
Especially with the slow, because that was, even with a little bit more attack speed, you're basically just perma-slowing people. And it being onto 3 stacks as well means that slow was kind of just getting a little bit too oppressive.
Susano up next, going to be seeing some buffs. Wind Siphon increasing the damage, and then Typhoon increasing the max damage.
Yeah, so some light touches here. Wind Siphon, you can see the damage is loaded towards the end, where it's just the base damage that's increasing over time. You're not seeing a scaling change there, which would have probably been a little bit too much, especially with how easy this ability is to hit. So 250 for late game isn't really that crazy. Typhoon, same thing here. We didn't want to change
it's a nice little buff, I guess.
The base across the board, and kind of front loading that on this case because the damage was pretty low here. Susano is one of those characters who we did buff previously, and we know we need to be quite careful for when he's
They didn't nerf him,
too
they
strong,
shifted
but his
him.
numbers deserve maybe even another bullet point, although I can tell chat's already pretty upset by seeing where Susano and buff put together.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on Susano. We know it's very easy for Susano to tip the scale, so we'll keep an eye out for sure.
This one's also pretty interesting too, because I feel like a lot of people. I'm pretty sure when I first mentioned a Thanatos buff, even Alex was just like, "That's scary," because he's Thanatos in Smite 1 and Smite 2. Just in general, his play style and the execute from range, it's always kind of like a pub stompers game. Heck, I play Thanatos because
that's a pretty meaty Thanatos buff.
Who don't know how to play against him, just will suffer.
Oh yeah.
That being said, his stats were really low, and not just for the aspect as well. That being said, we wanted to make sure that the aspect was slightly better.
We buffed
than,
Ymir.
The base, the non-aspect. So we hit the Harvester of Souls specifically in the non.
Bro, just play Ymir solo.
But gave him just a buff overall to his other abilities because he everywhere needed some love.
Yo, if you thought Ymir was hard to fight with him reducing your damage, increases his own auto attack damage, he's also reducing your attack speed now.
The cooldown, and then Soul Reap increase the silence.
Just play Ymir solo and just play
Thanatos buffs.
Yeah,
whatever.
Hopefully he performs a little bit better.
He's even more untradeable.
I believe this is our last god change.
That's right.
Our boy Ymir, Frostbite, the passive, now applies a 10% attack speed debuff to enemies.
I'm typing right now.
Yeah, that's right. So not only are you going to be dealing less damage to Ymir and taking more damage from Ymir, but you'll also just generally have less attack speed for everyone, right? So it's not something that just applies for you against Ymir. We wanted the opportunity. We wanted to look at Ymir in a way that, like, we in a spot where we haven't to kind of hit him before or given him a buff before, and he reduces want to just give him more damage.
Movement speed.
I think his Kilgoon will also know from his playtest against us that he doesn't need more damage.
He can block you with his wall.
Too obvious, too direct. We want
he can
a little bit more
stun
utility, you, and the passive.
He can reduce your damage.
So. Yeah. And we think this is pretty unique. I mean, he's kind of slowing people down. It makes sense that he's kind of attack speed slowing people as well.
Yeah.
Chat Ymir jungle.
I don't think
Give him the build, Kilgoon.
Yeah,
you got to put it in God Builder whenever it goes live.
Oh, I suppose I could. Yeah.
That way people could search your build.
Yes, they could.
Sweet. Well, that was a lot of item balance changes, a lot of God balance changes. I believe the plan is for us to flash test again for OB9 right after the show. I'll have to double check with Kabir, but I know for those who didn't get a chance to play yesterday, you will be able to have another opportunity to hop in and play with OB9 because you've got Guanu, Kali aspect, Guanu aspect, plus all these item and God balance changes as well for players to look forward to and try out.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I would say, like, chat always is asking about a lot of different gods and why they're getting buffed or nerfed or not touched or I think that there's a lot of item changes in this update which will affect a lot of the gods that were not otherwise directly buffed or nerfed. Right. And when you change too much at once, it can be hard to figure out what the outcome is going to be, right? So I think that hopefully a lot of the people that they're asking about will see some changes based on the item changes that we talked about previously.
Yeah, and also for those who generally have been keeping attention to, for the main patches versus hotfixes, you tend to see more of the nerfs and the hotfixes for gods.
Correct.
So we don't usually do those in the main patch. If we do, they're for a specific reason for that week, because we do patch changes in balance basically on a weekly basis now. So definitely keep attention to when we do hotfixes and check out those notes, because they happen quite often.
Yeah. So and
just
we have had
interesting,
this one chatter who has been asking for a while about why have we not changed anything about Mulan in a long time.
Yo,
My
thank you for the
understanding
sub
is
also, by the way,
because
JJ.
Mulan
Sorry I missed that. I don't know when
doing
you
fine
sub. I gotta fix
by
my
our
shit.
statistics and
Yeah,
by
thank
what
you
we
for the
see
sub,
in
though,
the
man.
high level games, right?
Mulan's generally
59
been
months
good.
is
She was one of
crazy.
those warriors who did even better with the kind of hybrid proc builds that a lot of people were building into. So maybe
Mulan is
not
doing
to say you're
fine.
playing her wrong,
She's
but,
just always been a good
I-
low-level character.
I know there were a lot of oppressive Mulans with Mystical Mail, with Bluestone, with Pridwinds.
He subbed after you
she
deafened?
was
That's
she
funny.
excelled at being one of those hybrid warriors. Now with a lot of those things pulled away from a lot of different characters, we're going to, again, like Kilgoon said, we're going to need to readdress who needs buffs and how, to make sure that we don't just make them from amazing to terrible to oppressive just back to back in the same patch. So Mulan's probably just
Titan David Paula.
Probably just fine. She's probably just fine the way right now. Let's see how these item changes affect all of these gods, and
Let's
we'll
tank
be
our
back here
win
in a few
rates.
weeks to do this right again, right?
Yep. Sweet. Well, we got about 15 minutes left in the show, so let's go ahead and open it up for a short Q&A before we open things up for our next Open Beta 9 Flash test. So, chat, I know we talked about a lot, so if you have any questions about god balance, item balance, sorry, I can't talk, any of the specialization stuff that we're kind of wrapping up with phase 3 and Open Beta 9, let's get to it.
I saw this question asked a couple times. It was, why does Bologna only scale with physical prots instead of both? And I will
not
answer
clumsy.
with what I think it is, and then you can tell me what you think it is. So it is interesting when gods have pros and cons, right? And at a high level, it is interesting to think I might want to pick Bologna into a more physical damage comp because she is better and her kit synergizes better against physical damage. If every god is good at everything, then the game feels very samey and it's not as interesting. And this is one way of differentiating and creating some subtle differences between
Maybe I should be in
what
the
a
chat.
character is
Maybe
good
this
against
should be
and what
more
they're
for
good at.
people that
No,
are.
that hits the nail on the head. I mean, she disarms. She has block
can
stacks
just
for
talk to
basic
them in the
attacks.
Discord
She
later.
is a very prot heavy, defensive character. We don't want to just give her everything.
Yeah.
Okay, her 2 now silences. Are you happy?
Oh, Jesus. What was? I remember you were testing a really weird.
It was. I don't mind sharing it. Bologna, one of Bologna's earliest iterations of her aspect, it was actually basically an entirely different aspect. Was that so? It was for support Bologna's, but it was that her 2 on the spin pulled enemies inwards, but then the entire ability just did a lot less damage. But as we saw with adding CC, you would just do that regardless because more CC equals better.
Bobby says that most items are becoming just actives or passives. Have we thought about adding more stat stick items?
I love when Bobby's here and he's wrong. I'm joking. No, we love you, Bobby. Yes, there are still stat stick items out there, and they tend to be some of the most efficient ones because the way the item store is balanced is that stat sticks actives give you the least efficiency in your stats. Passives give you even less efficiency in your stats. You tend to have more base stats according to that. Stat sticks give you the most efficiency because they don't have passives or actives. So that just tends to be that if you want to play full stat sticks, if you want your Wish Granting Pearl, your Yogi's necklaces, they're just the most efficient items. You do that to the entire item store, that's the right way to play the game. That's just factual. So we want to be very careful on just adding statistics. Plus, that just, yes, I could argue devil's advocate myself on it's good to have items like that so that everyone can have kind of safe items to buy. That being said, there are already kind of items like that where the efficiency on the passives and the actives are not their strong suit, and we did that specifically for this reason. So, for example, even Book of Thoth, Transcendence, Dev Gloves, we were talking in the Ambassador Discord, maybe they stack too easily, or Jotun's, and certain other items, they're just good to have. They're kind of no-brainers if you don't know what to build. They're probably pretty good. They're fine. You don't need to think about it too much. But that being said, the item store is one level of specialization to allow us to flex to maintain still being a MOBA. If everything was too similar, like kind of like again we were talking about with Bologna, there would just be a lot less skill expression, and the skill floor would go down, the skill ceiling would go down, and that is a whole different version of the game, which is not a bad thing, but we just want to be careful doing that too often.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
There was a couple of people were asking about the Artisans program. I think we're going to contact those people later this week. Is that still the plan?
I believe so. I believe that's the plan.
I mean, you need stat stick
I will
items.
note as well, like, even if you aren't accepted, right, like, we do also have the community merch program now, which I believe is pretty much accepting everybody that wants to make
just
community
about,
merch.
yeah.
So if you're if you want to, do 2D stuff that's Smite related and sell merch based on it, like that is something that you can do even if you are not accepted into the Artisan program. So.
Or balance team.
Are Kali aspect autos supposed to go through walls, or is that a bug?
I don't believe they're meant to go through walls.
Yeah,
Pawn, are you still here?
Pawn, are you watching?
Surprised. I can see why maybe they would, because the two
bug.
dogs.
Okay,
there we
right.
go.
Okay.
Love that.
I'll go fix it. There we go.
Pawn was like,
Live game
having a good
development
time.
here.
And you're like, all right, fine. Nice. All right. Yeah, live game development.
Pawn's so funny. What's the stat stick defense items? There's really none. It's like breastplate.
Okay, so we're working at a pretty fast pace to make sure that we can get a lot of
spectral
awesome stuff to you guys.
kind of.
The question we always need to ask ourselves for everything, but for aspects specifically, is do we want to go back and rework old aspects, or do we want to create
kind
new ones?
of.
There are people who dislike Loki's aspect or think that it's probably not utilized.
Genji's
and same thing
kind
with
of.
several aspects.
Yeah.
But there are also people who maybe use
Well, stat sticks are.
the answer currently isn't zero.
I don't mean true stat sticks where the items have no passive or actives.
Better ways to spend time,
there's like
and
2
there are
items in the
always-
game that have literally
there are
no
always
passive or active.
opportunities to go back
When
and
I'm
reflect
referring to a
upon what
stat
could
stick,
be
I
done
just mean
better.
any item that is
Right
a
now, we wanna make sure that we
underwhelming
kinda get more
passive
options out there.
/
There's a lot of
active
gods who don't
that you
have
buy
any
it
aspect.
mostly just for the
And
stats.
it's I don't want to say it's a necessarily
It's like
just a
Yogi's
vanity for
Wish
trying to
Granting
create more
Pearl.
aspects, but it's something that we find is a little bit more important right
what's
now.
the other
Is
item?
to like kind of just
Item I
broaden
just bought in
that
my dual
opportunity.
game.
We don't have all the gods in the game yet. Let's make sure that we can kind of
Negation.
expand on what we do have, and we absolutely do have a desire to go back and look at some of the
Jotuns.
aspects, and we're still doing that. It's not like we've forgotten that. We absolutely want to, and in fact, it's almost something like we could be doing that, and I don't mind doing that, but then we have to come up with what's a better one too. And oh wait, but we have this really cool idea right now. Let me just go work on that instead. It's kind of that gimmick. So yes, we do want to know. We do want to revisit some of the weaker aspects or the ones that people find lackluster. But even as we're seeing in chat right now, some people find that aspect to be interesting, and it would just be taking things away, which is always slightly problematic.
Yeah. I noticed AI and bot matches will randomly stand in place, almost like they're going AFK. Is this being addressed? Yes, we are working more on the AI over the past.
To be fair, I don't mind that they didn't really nerf any gods.
Going forward, basically, usually what happens is that there
Especially when they're doing such a big pass over the item.
Things that the bot
shop.
wants to do, and it can't decide, and it just kind of gets stuck. So we are working on that.
Should I check?
And we should have fixed some of the main issues that were causing that in Arena, I believe in this most recent update. But I know that they're looking at it now for like Joust and other modes. So it is something we're aware of and something that we're trying to fix.
Hercules aspect is OP. Inbound, didn't I ask you to make a video to say what your thoughts on the aspects? Did you just dono wall me? Come
No, I did it.
get on
I
that.
did it.
Monday on Titan Talk,
Check the
you mentioned
tube.
rank rewards. Can we please elaborate on the time frame? Does my current rank count for anything? Will I get rewards for my current rank, or do I need to regrind after the reset? So I believe we probably could have done a little bit better job. I think we talked about it pretty quickly.
And I was just reading off of Max's notes that I did not fully grasp.
So the plan is OB9 next Monday. There will be a soft ranked reset for the next split. Ranked rewards for this current split.
I mean, even Yogi's
that
has a passive.
Started since the beginning of free to play will be sent out in Open Beta 10. So wherever you're at before Open Beta 9 goes live will will correspond with the rewards that you get in Open Beta 10. Okay. Sorry, I know it's a little bit confusing. The UI team just needed a little bit more time to get those rewards done for this current ranked season split.
Okay, so it's ending. I gotta get I got to hit my next rank, which I'm like 5 games away.
Yes.
From. Okay, gotcha. Bob, you want to carry me? No, I'm sorry.
There's 2.
Have we ever thought about putting anti-heal on Lernian Bow as a base passive instead of it just being
Every
tied
build
to attack?
needs good stats. So if you get
Any
good
kind of
stats with good passive.
hunter, anti-heal items.
Yeah, I
mean,
agree. I agree,
Brawlers
Sam.
does exist for that. It is, 1, has a lot of strength, and 2, it is now basic attacks as well. I think
But it's like
my
both
one
of these
the only
items are fucking
abilities,
luxury
but for right
stat
now, it is
sticks.
basic
So they're
attacks and
not
abilities. So it is still
like
just a
hardly
good
stat
option. Learning
sticks.
Bow is kind of just the more interesting way.
Hardly,
to go
'cause
about
they're
it.
not
If you didn't
cheap.
Want to kind of have, I want to call it like a passive gameplay, but you're hitting enemies with your basic attacks and abilities anyways. The only way to make it more passive would for it to be an aura, which Healing Ankh is there for anyway. So I would actually say if you want to not think about it and you don't want to have to use the act effect, Brawlers works completely fine for that.
Kilgun, I've seen a lot of people asking about our next God roadmap show. I would anticipate that will happen sometime close to or after we have revealed all the gods that we have talked about to the community thus far.
That's correct.
So I can't say what I'm learning?
No.
And so somebody says, well, there's no attack speed on Brawlers. Trade-offs. That's the kind of the point of the, it's like, do you want a lot of power and do you want, or strength, and do you want to be able to do good anti-heal on your attacks, right? Like, that's a trade-off versus getting more attack speed. Like,
Yeah, just my answer is buy an Odysseus bow then if you want both.
yeah, together they add up to
A lot of things.
Odysseus Bow also just does a lot of damage. If you're not building it, please build it. It's so good. It's really good. We should put 1% attack speed on Brawlers. How is Guanu performing in the flash test? I would say it's always hard to get actual great data from flash testing because it's a relatively small player population. Usually we get better data on just raw feels feedback and if there's any
Blink
like bugs
13
or
times
issues that people run into.
if it's
but like
Scylla
pure balance
clumsy.
is hard to ascertain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Pawn, and you're here so you can correct me, but I remember you said it this morning. You actually made some balance changes to Guan based on the PTS feedback as well. So we're still keeping an eye on that. I think the idea was
I'd be
less
down, Crow.
scaling on the aspect to make sure that felt like the correct support oriented approach versus it just being the right answer all the time for an int Guan. So that way you have strength Guan playstyle, int Guan playstyle, and then aspect Guan playstyle.
Yep. Pawn says halved damage into the intelligence scaling on aspect.
Yeah. So we definitely are utilizing that as an opportunity to make changes, but yeah.
Yep. And I know Pawn's been doing some just general feels fixes on Guanu as well. And I know we got to report that, canceling his ultimate.
H got his Hilla.
You're trying to do it instantly, and some of that stuff he's been working on and fixing up. So shout outs to Pawn.
Okay, I will answer this. Why did we switch from physical and magical to strength and int? My brain hates that you switch this, and I still call them physical and magical. Even Kilgunus said it during Titan Talk. So the reason why we switched it is because the damage that is being dealt by each god is set, right? Like Guanu is always going to deal physical damage regardless of what stat he builds. And so we needed separate names for the stats so that it wasn't confusing. It's like, but I'm building magical power, but I'm still dealing physical damage. So because of that, we needed different terms for them. I'm an old man. Like I can't keep up with these numbers. I think in my head, I know what they are, right? I just say the wrong words a lot. And, it's obviously like strength.
Also, all the 10 years, 11 years of context of us saying the previous things and us saying those publicly as well. And not only that, but we started Smite 2 with them being called physical power and magical power as well. So even internally in some of our tools, they're still called that way.
Yeah, whenever I'm talking about another game too, I'm like, oh yeah, they're gods. Like their characters. Like I'm like, oh yeah, the paladin's gods. I'm like, no, wait, that's not.
That's why I think I just try and say characters for everything now.
Yeah.
Or even when you say abilities, I just call them AO1, which that doesn't mean anything to a lot of people. But
yeah, Young Sonics is asking for any update on the API release. We were.
I don't know what they're going to do with
we
Olorun.
were relatively close to having something that we were going to be able to release, but then we decided to rework the way that some of the data was stored in our backend so that it was more accessible for us to be able to pull like match stats. And because of that, like the API was then going to have to change.
I love
shortly
Tikis.
thereafter. So we were like, let's finish this arc of work and then
I love the
update
Tikis.
API and then we'll release it. So maybe sometime soonish, but I know it's been a while. I'm not going to give you a hard date, but we were making progress towards it, and then unfortunately we ran into this.
More starter items win. Well, I'm just going to answer that with one day. One day we'll look at some more of those. We added some more. We added Vampiric Shroud.
Yep.
It's
got to be Scylla. Scylla Sylvanas.
But there's also opportunities for us to like flex into what we could do. Kind of like you said yourself, Excalibur. It could be something brand new that we haven't done before. It's just we had this huge item.
Yo, Hurley.
Hurley,
thank you for the sub. Can we get some hype in the chat? Boy, Hurley has. Hurley has. Hurley doesn't huzz. Hurley has.
For us to look at. And starter items is one of those ones that we'll either do with time or we'll do when we have a good idea. It's just not the highest priority.
How fat Odin Shield will be if you go high int items now?
Clearly we want.
I feel like it only scales at like 15%.
Oh, I need my
You get like 1,000. It's only like 500. No, I don't look at data mining. Hurley has even.
Let's see here. Where has my grass gone? Missing on console. I believe it's a bug. I think it occurred with the jungle updates, but not sure. I haven't heard anything.
I have not heard about that.
They released cows.
I can take a look. I have them all sitting on my desk, but I have not noticed that.
I know we've had the Baron aspect that was being like temp worked on a while ago in PTSs. That was one of the questions here. That was just one that we knew we weren't going to ship. We wanted some more time to cook it. We kept keeping it on in Flash Test and PTS. I believe for this time we actually just finally just decoupled it, so it's not there anymore. We just haven't we haven't had the opportunity.
They've already talked about the next roadmap, Jiggy.
What we actually wanted to do for Baron's aspect. I know there's a lot of good ideas out there. There's a lot of good ideas for a lot of great characters right now. So we just haven't had the time to go back to it, and when we do, we will. But he's not the next one. Like that one will come back in, and we'll just have to wait until it does.
He's a lost cod. He doesn't listen.
2 p.m., so it's time for one more question. Man, oh, wow. I guess the lights are picking up our audio.
Wait, what?
What? Hey, it's party time. It's a party.
You're like just outside with like a little switch.
Right.
Just
little remote changing the colors. Quick Alani check before one more question. I've got Orange Kiss.
Cherry Twist.
Good stuff.
Friend,
yeah.
We need to... There we go, just in frame.
There we go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
friend.
Let's see here. In regards to item specialization, is there going to be sort of a relic pass, including but not limited to further changes to Blink?
Clumsy is... He looks irritated with that question.
Was that a question for me? I was hiding.
Yeah, Clumsy's like, can I back up? Yeah. Or just general
What's the question again? You said things I didn't want to hear. And
I know, right? You just blocked it out. Relic specialization, similar to the item specialization pass.
Relics have been something that we want to discuss and how we want to approach them next, or if we want to at all. It's definitely one of those ones that yeah, I think there's opportunities there for us to do something more interesting or to, find more opportunities or different relics and whatever they may be. For example, one of the reasons why Sunder stocks went up is because Blink stocks went down.
Yeah.
And those are the only two offensive-based relics. So it kind of makes sense that happened. So, for example, do we want to create a new offensive-based relics? Are offensive-based relics even fun? Do we want to find other opportunities there? We will be looking at that.
PTS
it's not
now.
the next thing on our list. And it's probably one of the... I would argue it's probably one of the most important things that we want to make sure not to do incorrectly because relics affect everyone all the time in all game modes and are a fundamental component of Smite 2. So yeah, let's just delete them. We'll figure out what to do. It's just we want to a topic that we take very seriously.
I have one quick one and one actual one. The quick one is, are we still adding role-specific scoreboard order? It is on the list of things that we want to do. It's just we keep having other things that get prioritized over it, so it will be in the game at some point, but we just keep having other things that we would rather do first. There's another person who asked the question about have we considered about having enclosed parts of the conquest map, and they think it would be fun. So in very early Smite, the Fire Giant pit was actually a cave.
Yeah.
And so it was inside a volcano, and you went in there, and it was enclosed, and it was a cool vibe. But there's kind of two key reasons why we don't do that too much anymore. The first one is that from a spectator perspective, you can't see what the hell's going on in there, which isn't great.
It's also an issue with Thanatos.
The second one is that more importantly, it doesn't play well with a lot of abilities, right? So Thor or Thanatos are gods that go up in the air and then come down. Can they crash through that roof? Do they... can they see through it when they're up there, but they can't go through it? How do you convey that? Is that something that feels good or bad? Similarly, most walls are of a certain height in Smite because we expect that people with leaps can leap over them. So if it's an enclosed area, then can people just not leap into there or leap out? and that would be very weird for Smite. It, might be interesting, but it just is something that we have thought has felt weird when we've played with things like that in the past.
That's a good point.
Can you imagine Aladdin wall
the abilities
running
being
up
maxed
an
from
entire
level 1?
or Casper
That's kind of interesting.
Cthulhu alt inside the Smite one.
Losing
volcano. Like,
100 power,
He's just bigger than the volcano.
but gaining the passives right off
those
the
are kind of
rip.
some of the reasons why we have not done that since the original Fire Giant.
That's kind of interesting.
And we've played around with.
I think I'd like something a
ideas
little
like
bit more
it, we
cool,
keep
but
running into those same issues.
that's kind of interesting.
Cool. Clumsy, I think you got to choose one.
Oh, really? I thought.
No, everybody has to pick a question.
Choose
You've
me.
been on the show a lot of times. You answered one. You didn't pick one. You have to pick one.
But what if I just don't like any of them? Choose me. You had no question there.
Choose me.
Can you add to Cernus aspect, make it where you dash through minions or jungle camps, lowers the dash cooldown and reduced amount than gods? Or add a CC effect? Yeah, I mean, I think there's been some opportunities to talk about how Cernus aspect could be a bit better. I think people like the idea of playing around with the 3 more so than playing around the melee, just because that's almost more of a unique feature that only Cernus would do here versus if we just kept increasing the scaling of his heavy glaive, then he just becomes a really, really good melee attacker. That's not the most exciting. I think leaning more towards the 3 effect could be something interesting there. I mean, watching like Fine OK's crazy videos of him just like dashing through entire team fights was definitely a lot of fun.
Sweet. Well, Kilgoon, Clumsy, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for covering all the upcoming balance.
Alrighty, and that is the Titan talk. And overall, did I fix this? I did. Ooh. And overall, not too bad. After they've kind of done like this entire specialization overpass for all the items, I think it's came out pretty okay. I think we just need some stat stick protection items and like some stat stick like attack speed items too. I think that's just kind of what's missing. Or you buff or rework some of the items that are already in the game into making them a little bit more stat efficient and making them less reliant on their passives or actives. Because I think that's like the big niche that's missing in Smite currently is that there is just no way to get super high whatever stat you're looking for. Other than like Rod, which gives you just like double the intelligence. But you can't make your crit do more damage outside of just Deathbringer. You can't make your attack speed go super high outside of just like Odie Bow. So that's kind of what I want them to do. I kind of want them to specialize a few more like cheap stat stick items, not super expensive wish granting pearl negation. I don't think those items are very good, but yeah, that's what I'm interested in. And yeah, overall, again, I like it. I want to see a little bit more, and I want to see a little bit more god balance next patch. I think this patch's god balance is pretty irrelevant.